Hey guys, so I wanted to come on here and talk about this shooting that was in DC at the Washington. I think it was a newspaper. It's called something Gazette. I think like the Washington Gazette or something, whatever, or the Capitol Gazette. So you have this white psychopathic person who shot up and killed 5 people. Again, there's no FBI report on white identity extremists, and there's no national conversation about white male pathology that keeps leading to these new shootings. So at this point, Black people have a lot of power. You can shift the narrative, and even if they won't discuss it, what you can do is inundate social media, which speaks of how we need to have a national conversation about white male terrorism. That's just the reality of what it is. It boggles my mind why Black people refuse to use social media as a platform to control the narrative. But, you know, at the end of the day, if Black people don't want to do that, nobody can force them to. But this is a time where we could use the fact that there's a racist president and white supremacy has been normalized and accepted. We could use that to our advantage. We really could. We could be making moves. We could be getting a lot of headway right now, but we refuse to do that. And, you know, Black people have to look within themselves to ask, why is it that they refuse to fight white supremacy, but rather they'll stay complacent with it? And I understand that when the majority of our men are complacent with white supremacy to the degree that they are helping to maintain it, it becomes difficult not only for the women and children, but for the other Black men who really want white supremacy gone. I do not believe that all Black men want to be in the system of white supremacy. I know there's a number of them who really can't stand it. However, the amount of them who are willing to help them, especially the amount of Black men who are willing to aid white supremacy with their money and influence, makes it difficult for even the Black men who want to be out of this system and who want to be liberated and want to be able to manage their lives without having to worry about racial terrorism. I know that there are those out there. But I really do think it will be to our benefit if we use social media to change the narrative and take the narrative off of demonizing Black men and put it on to demonizing white males, which they even classified themselves that they're the biggest threat to this country. It's not a Muslim, it's not extremist, it's not a foreign terrorist, it's homegrown white supremacist, thoroughbred, grade A white supremacist terrorists. Those are the ones who are most detrimental to this country. Now, I want to play a couple videos for you guys, and then I'm going to come back for some commentary.
Accused of going on a murderous rampage inside a newspaper newsroom will soon face a judge. And today, the survivors of the attack in Annapolis are defiant. Just hours after the attack, the newspaper staff published its morning paper. Today's opinion page is mostly blank. It includes a tribute to the 5 victims who lost their lives. Survivors of the attack continued working on today's edition while they waited for updates on their colleagues. The victims included 4 journalists and a sales assistant ranging in age from 34 to 65 years old. It is one of the deadliest attacks on journalists in U.S. history. The shooting began just after 3 in the afternoon yesterday when the suspect burst into the Capitol Gazette's newsroom armed with a handgun, smoke bombs, and flash grenades. Police tell CBS News they believe the suspect acted alone. Police say 38-year-old Gerard Ramos had threatened the newspaper in the past and did so again just a few hours before the shooting. He's charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder. CBS News national correspondent Chip Reed joins us now from Annapolis, Maryland. So, Chip, the suspect will appear in court. What can we expect to take place in the courtroom today?
Well, we expect him to appear in court. You know, there are cases where they appear on video or they waive their right to appear, but we are anticipating that he will probably be in court today. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. Certainly, I think the odds of him being released on any kind of bail or bond are infinitesimally small. It's not clear what the judge will do, whether it will be a real quick proceeding. One thing to keep in mind, he has been charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder, but there is no death penalty in Maryland. It was abolished 5 years ago. It's one of 18 states that have no death penalty. I'm sure this will result in some people calling once again for the reimposition of the death penalty, but at this point, that is not an option. But I think you can expect that to pop up again in the public debate and perhaps in the legislative debate. The expectation would be that the prosecutors are going to push for a life sentence, probably life without parole.
Right. So the investigation continues to unfold. Police have been really open about his background. We know that they were searching his home. Anything else about the investigation so far?
Yeah, actually, I should say the police have been very good about, they've been very, very careful not to confirm stuff until they absolutely had it nailed down. The fact is we nailed down exactly who the suspect was, Jared Ramos, long before they confirmed it to us through other sources. So it's been a slow process getting information from the police, but that's the way they need to act. They can't put stuff out there until they're absolutely sure of it. And in some cases, the media has been out ahead of them. But they say they have video of him in there doing what he did. There is absolutely zero doubt in their minds that they have the right person. He was found hiding under a desk. Other people there in the room identified him. And don't forget, 5 people were killed here. And it's an issue where the police are not speaking lightly. They're not speaking quickly. They're not saying things unless they know that they absolutely have the facts nailed down.
Right. Do we know if we'll be hearing from police anytime soon? Any press conferences scheduled?
Well, we know that at this location there is scheduled to be a press conference, probably with the prosecutor afterwards. It's really at the point where the prosecutors take over the public speaking from the police. We may hear from them too when they get more information about the investigation, but it's probably the prosecutor who we're going to hear from right here after this hearing, which is scheduled for 10:30 Eastern Time.
All right, Chip Reed, thank you very much.
You bet.
And now, before I play this one, because this is the one where it says the former FBI profiler, before I play this one, I am going to say that what I may or may not stop in between this playing. It's about 7 minutes. I might stop in between it and give some commentary on it. But again, like always, I want you guys to watch the language, okay? Because language is very important. Language is not only going to set the tone, because understand this is publicized. So this man, they're telling you, is going to go through a trial. Based on the type of language that the media uses towards this man, it is going to determine the outcome. It's going to heavily influence the outcome of his trial. So whenever something like this happens, they're already setting it up to do what they plan to do. Because again, the goal is never to demonize whiteness. It is to demonize blackness. And this is why I'll say it again, and I'll keep saying it. Black people need to use social media to their benefit to take control of the narrative. And unfortunately, many of us are not doing that. But let's get into this video.
Investigators say the suspected killer held a long-standing grudge against the Capital Gazette. Jared Ramos sued the paper back in 2012 after it posted a column about him pleading guilty in a social media harassment case. The defamation case was then dismissed. In an interview you will see only on CBS, Chip Reed spoke to the attorney of the harassment victim.
Brendan McCarthy tells us his client was stalked and harassed by Ramos for years, and she lived in fear for almost a decade. He says she was so afraid she moved out of the state of Maryland.
He was as angry an individual as I have ever seen.
Attorney Brendan McCarthy says Jared Ramos tormented his client for years.
She lost her job because of him.
And
she lost her job because of this individual. He is malevolent. He forwarded a letter to her employer basically stating that she was bipolar and a drunkard, which is ridiculous.
McCarthy says the harassment and stalking began around 2009 after they became friends on Facebook. In 2011, she took him to court where he pleaded guilty to criminal harassment and was placed on 18 months probation. 5 days later, the Capital Gazette wrote a story titled, "Jared Wants to Be Your Friend." It outlined Ramos' alleged erratic behavior, including emails he allegedly sent telling McCarthy's client, "Go hang yourself. You're going to need a restraining order now, and you can't make me stop."
Now, I want to pause right here, because what they're trying to do is, because most of these crimes that these white psychopathic terrorists commit are without motive. So what they're trying to do is tell you that this psychopathic terrorist waited, they said 12, it happened in 2012. So they're trying to get you to believe that he waited 6 years. He held a 6-year-long grudge to go attack a paper. How much sense does that make to you? Because if you're a psychopathic terrorist, you're going to want instant gratification. You're not going to wait 6 years, because the reality of it is the people who initially wrote the article may or may not even be working there after 6 years. So I don't even believe that this has anything to do with it. I believe they're feeding you this as one. Now, I'm not going to say the familiarity with the paper would have made it a likely target, because he's familiar with it. So if you're going to want to go shoot up a place, you're going to say, oh, okay, I'll go shoot up that place because I want to go kill some people, but I might as well go shoot up this place that I'm known for, that I'm known to. Not only that, but it's a Capitol. It's the Capitol Gazette. So it's a representation of the paper for America. I'm pretty sure the Capitol Gazette isn't the only newspaper who covered this story about this man during that time. And that's what they're probably not telling you. So I don't believe that he's just targeting it because 6 years ago they wrote something that defamed his character. Really? But they have to get a motive somewhere.
Was obsessively angry about this particular story.
Ramos sued the paper for defamation in 2012. The case was dismissed in 2015 on appeal. According to court documents, the judge said there is nothing to prove anything that was published was in fact false.
I, for one, received what I consider to be a death threat.
Tom Marquardt was the Capitol's executive editor at the time of the article. He said he went to police about Ramos' threat, but was told nothing could be done.
I feared for my life. I feared for my family's life. And I feared for my staff's life.
He wanted to get revenge.
McCarthy said on Thursday when he heard about the shooting at the Capitol newspaper, he immediately thought of Ramos.
I knew who did it. He did it.
And you've said it was inevitable.
It was inevitable.
That he
was going to do something violent. The only question was, who would he get first?
McCarthy spoke with his client after the shooting, and she told him she still fears for her life, even though Ramos is behind bars. Anne-Marie?
Great reporting, Chip Reed. Thank you. Mary Ellen O'Toole is a former senior FBI profiler, and she joins me now from Annapolis, Maryland. Mary Ellen, I'm so happy you have joined us to talk about this. I think many of us, when we heard about this shooting, started to try to figure out, what sort of person would do something like this. We know that the suspect had a long history.
They're rolling into you the mental illness. Remember, they're rolling into you. They're going to roll you out the mental illness. That's why they have this woman on here, because they're not going to tell it for what it is. They're not going to just give you the real. They're going to roll out mental illness. So I'm telling you, they're already setting it up. So they're ignoring the fact that the previous person said this man had a known history for just being a violent terrorist because he was terrorizing a woman. Okay, so he's a violent terrorist, but they're about to give you the mental illness excuse.
With the newspaper. What should perhaps we have seen, or what should have been seen as a major sign with an individual like this?
Well, that's a good question, and I can't say that there were just one or two major signs, because there are many people that have these personality traits that never step over the line and commit a crime like this. So with this individual, though, he would be what I describe as an injustice collector, but a dangerous injustice collector. And this is someone who collects injustices their entire life, and then for some, he will respond disproportionately. And certainly yesterday, it was an extremely disproportionate response to what happened to him in 2011 through 13. People close to this individual or who knew him would understand that he was an injustice collector and that he was brooding and making plans to actually carry out the crime that he committed yesterday.
So let's talk about what we do know about the attack. We know that he used a shotgun and that he had smoke grenades in his backpack. What does that indicate to you?
Well, two things. First, regarding the weapon, I mean, the shotgun is a terrifying weapon. You just have to hear it, and it just will put incredible fear in you. It may not be as lethal as an automatic weapon, but it can certainly kill many people, which it did. And that may have been the only gun he could access. And police are, I'm sure, looking into whether or not he attempted to obtain an automatic weapon. But nonetheless, he had a very lethal weapon with him. Number two, the smoke grenades could have been used by him when police or someone else entered the room to keep them, to confuse them, to keep them from being able to access him or being able to get to him. So it could have been something that he planned to use as something that was a diversionary device.
Mm-hmm. And there are reports now also that when police entered the room, they found him hiding under a desk. There are reports that he had sort of tossed the weapon aside away from him. What can you draw from that?
Well, possibly a couple of things. And the first thing is that he may have wanted to blend in with the other people, the other victims, with the hopes of being able to walk out, not unlike the Parkland shooting down in Florida. The second possibility, because you can never zero in on one, at least not this soon, is that he just did not want to be shot. He wanted to just, be taken alive. So there are several possibilities for that behavior. But I do think one is that he wanted to blend in and possibly hope to walk away.
Yeah, when you hear about the smoke bombs, I can't help but to think that maybe he had some sort of escape plan, but the police arrived there remarkably fast, and maybe that threw things off. The other bit of information that we're getting about him is that he damaged his fingertips so that police would have a hard time identifying him. That's not very common.
Well, it's not very common at all to be able to successfully do that. So if he doesn't have a job where he could have damaged...
I want to pause here for a second, because I want you to notice something with all of these mass shooters. They'll tell you who the mass shooter was, or any criminal in general, any crime that a white person make. They'll tell you who that person is, and then they'll sit around speculating, although they got the person in custody, because to my understanding, they have this man in custody. He's alive because they were talking about that he was going to face a judge. Notice how they're not asking him what his motive were. They can simply ask him, why did you shoot up this newspaper? What was it about this paper that made you want to shoot it up? Because they're going to give him a lenient sentence anyway. They're going to give him a lighter sentence anyway. So why not tell him, we'll reduce your sentence if you tell us why you shot up this paper, rather than sitting around speculating. Because they may find out that he just shot it up. It didn't have anything to do with a publication that was written on him, because like I said, there's no guarantee that the person who even wrote it would have been there 6 years later. So I don't even believe that because there's writers for the paper, there's editors for the paper, so there's people in different positions. The whole entire paper didn't publish that one article, and usually when you publish an article, it has the writer's name on it. So that's assuming that he would be targeting the writer 6 years after he wrote the thing, assuming that he would, whatever writer it was. But why don't they just ask him why he did it?
His fingerprints, but still, nonetheless, if he did it intentionally or unintentionally, a fingerprint examiner would still be able to get his prints from the sides of his fingerprints, from the palm. So people read a book and they think that they can do away with their fingerprints. That is very, very rare to be able to do it successfully.
Yeah, and in fact, police were able to identify him pretty quickly, and they started to search his home. What would they be looking for there?
At his home, they'd be looking for many things. They would be looking for anything he wrote down, like journals or diaries. They will be looking for information in his computer. What sites is he going to? Who is he communicating with? What other things he just has in his house? Does he have components that he could use to build a device? Who else lives in the home? Who could possibly have been aware of what he was doing? Does he have storage areas? Does he have underground facilities where he could keep something? So they will be putting together that secret part of his life, that part of his life that he does not want anybody else to know about.
Mary Ellen O'Toole, always appreciate your insight and your expertise. Thank you so much.
Now, you've seen those two recordings, and what you didn't hear them mention is the pathology of white men who keep shooting up things, because understand that even though they tried to pull an okie doke on people and change the criteria for mass shooters, you still have most of the mass shooters being white. Whether they're whether they're foreign or domestic, it doesn't matter. White people still account for 90% of all mass shootings, and I would venture to say 100% of all mass shootings of this sort. Because saying like some rival gang shootings is the equivalent of a person just targeting a specific building, murdering people who've done absolutely nothing, that's deception right there. It's not the same. So 100% of mass shootings of this kind are carried out by white people. And that's something that they're not trying to address. And that's something that I really wish Black people would start addressing online. But, you know, after that live stream I did yesterday showing the different Black men and just how they're carrying on, you know, the beta manosphere, and then who else was it? It was the people that I was kind of invited onto their channel over. You already see what their priority is. They'll sit up and talk about what Black women are or aren't doing, but they're not going to focus on the fact that you have white supremacist terrorists running around here shooting up everything, yet Black men are demonized and targeted and villainized all day, every day. And that seems to not be an issue for Black men, focusing on what they feel like Black women should be doing and if not doing, rather than focusing on correcting their behavior is. It's just a smokescreen. And that I'm beginning to think that a lot of these Black men really do want to be in the system of white supremacy. They don't really care about being subjugated. But what I would encourage people to do is take this time to switch the narrative. This is the face of terrorism and demonic activity in this country. And what they're going to do is they're going to try to say, oh, well, his name is Ramos, so he's not white, he's a Hispanic, because you know how high the IQ of these trolls are, to where they want to sit up here and think your last name determines your race. But it's the same as these Hebrew Israelites who think that your gender determines your race. So it's no different. But, you know, if you look at this, they said Ramos is a resident of Laurel, Maryland. He sued the newspaper and one of its journalists, alleging defamation in 2012, according to reports, but they're not telling you which report said that. So the reality of it is for all we know, this could have never even happened, because they're saying according to reports. What reports and from whom? Police have said they believe the shooting was a targeted attack. So they have this, I don't know if we want to play it or not. It's probably just backed by a bunch of music, which is usually how they do it now. So they're just regurgitating what we already know. They said 2 others were hurt in the targeted attack in Annapolis, Maryland. Then notice how, here's the thing. Before they even released these things to the news, clearly they already know what story they're going to put out. So it doesn't matter what facts you're actually dealing with. They're going to put out what they want to put out. And that's why in this one, they're saying, oh, well, this was a targeted attack. But you said you don't even know if it was a targeted attack. And then they're running with this narrative of, oh, he sued the newspaper according to reports. But they're not even telling who they were, who the reports came from. The attacker threw smoke grenades and fired a shotgun at his victims, according to Anne Arundel County Police Chief William Cramp. That's why I say all of these petitions to somehow get things on the ballot so that they can deal with guns, that's pointless, because this dude bought some smoke grenades, they'll make bombs, they'll make everything. So none of these things are going to really work unless they deal with just eradicate. They will really have to just get white men out of this country in order to make it safe. The newspaper's editor, Rob Hyson, was among those killed in the horrifying scenes, according to the Baltimore Sun, which owns the newspaper group. So why wouldn't they have attacked the Baltimore Sun? It owns the Capital Gazette. 4 people died at office and a 5th died after being rushed to the hospital, CNN reports. But again, here's the thing. I don't really care about this, in all honesty. All of the people who were killed were white. So again, you have white on white crime. You have white men going out and doing these mass shootings and killing other white people. But I told you guys, they're not going to address their own pathology because they really don't care about how many white people die. They care about the appearance of them being better and moral. And what black people could do is use social media to taint that appearance and to squash that myth that somehow white people don't engage in terrorism. I don't care what this man's last name is. I really don't care about what his motive were. Newspapers write bad articles about celebrities and other people all the time, and they don't go around shooting up and killing people. So the reality of it is either way you pitch it, this would indicate something is wrong with their psychology. It says one U.S. official said the suspect was identified using facial recognition technology after he damaged his fingerprints in what police believe was an effort to prevent him from being identified easily. No gunfire was exchanged between the suspect and police officials said, adding that the weapon used was a long gun. A reporter at the newspaper earlier tweeted about the shooting, saying the gunman shot through the glass door to the office. His quote was, "Can't say more and don't want to declare anyone dead, but it's bad," said Phil Davis, the crime and courts reporter. There is nothing more terrifying than hearing multiple people get shot while you're under your desk and then hear the gunman reload. But again, they're saying there's nothing more terrifying, but what are they going to do about white psychology and white male terrorism? They're not going to do anything. So this is why I won't be, I wouldn't, and black people shouldn't either. Black people shouldn't even get involved with any commentary on this, and except to say white male terrorism is the problem. And unless they address white psychology, then we don't care nothing about no gun law petitions because it's not going to do anything. The problem isn't guns. The problem is white psychology. Let me know what you guys think. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you in the next one.